Hi, good Erev Shabbos, Parshas Teitze, 5781. I have a colleague in London, Ontario, with the name of Rabbi Lazer Gerko, who writes concerning the halacha about if you're working in a neighbor's, in a fellow's vineyard, you're allowed to nibble, you're allowed to help yourself to something to eat while you're working there in the vineyard. However, if you go to somebody else's house and you're just visiting, you're not allowed to help yourself to something that hasn't been offered to you. That's called theft. And Torah tells us how much can you actually eat in the vineyard, and mentions that you can eat as much as you need, as much as will satisfy you, but not gluttonously. Not You can't overeat, and you can't take any grapes home with you to feed family and friends. And it makes sense, you're out there, you're working in the field, you're working, and there's this kind of food, produce all around you, and you can't make the person starve. Okay, so you don't deny him the opportunity, the license to pop a couple of grapes during the course of his working. But again, he can't take more, he can't stuff his pockets with it, and he can't take it home. So what happens if you're Jewish and you don't happen to work in a vineyard? The entire world is God's vineyard. And the first thing that strikes you about a vineyard are those straight lines. The neat patterns that maximize the use of space. And the second thing that strikes usually in a vineyard is the beauty and the fragrance of the grapes. The world that we live in, especially now, can seem chaotic. Storms take out entire villages or waterfronts, earthquakes, God forbid, volcanoes erupting, plagues, destroying entire human or animal or vegetative populations. But if you look underneath, you find that God is there. There's nothing random happening in the world. There's some kind of structure, there's some kind of order, there's some kind of quid pro quo. We can't maybe always see the reason, but we understand that it's a vineyard and that there's a pattern and things are laid out in a particular kind of way. And yeah, there's crime and there's war and there's terrorism and there's violence and there's hatred and there's bigotry and discrimination and racism and stupidity and many other terrible negative forces that afflict us. But if we focus on the negative, it really doesn't do anybody any good. If we take in the entire picture, you can see that truly God has created a beautiful vineyard, and it's full of fragrant, beautiful vines, and it has delicious, luscious fruit. And if the world is God's vineyard, we need permission to be in it. You can't just wander into somebody else's yard. Okay? Our license to enter the vineyard is because we're working in it. God placed us in his vineyard to tend to it and to harvest it. And the fruits that we harvest are the mitzvahs and the good deeds that we do. And as long as we perform those mitzvot and discharge our duties as God's employees, we're allowed to benefit from the world, from God's largesse. We have license to enjoy the resources of the world. We can eat the food. We can cut down its trees to build houses. We can use the resources to provide for our needs. But we mustn't take more than we need. And we got to remember, we can't take it home. There's no need to make do with a bare minimum. The Torah tells us the employee has license to eat until they're satisfied, okay? And that's very subjective. Some people are more used to eating more than other people. That's okay. You have a right to have luxury, comfort. A pious person doesn't have to live in poverty. You can have a nice house, you can have nice cars at work. But if you buy something you really don't need, and the only reason you want it is because of the status symbol, then you've taken more than you need. When you get something that has no practical benefit except for the social value conferred by the label, that's kind of stoking our ego, not serving our needs. If you have a need for something, gesundheit, you should have the means to buy it, and you should purchase it. If it's beyond our needs, then we don't really have that license. And the other thing to remember is that we can't take it home with us. We live on this world for 120 years, please God. Before we were born, we had souls. We are souls that were residing in Shemayim. And after that 120, we'll go back there where home truly is. Earth is a temporary stopover at the moment. And when we go home, we won't be able to take our wealth with us. We can collect whatever we need to eat while we're here in the vineyard, but we can't put it in the basket to take it home with us. So don't spend your efforts in collecting a vast fortune that you'll never be able to spend in your lifetime. You can't take it with you. You're in the vineyard as an employee. You're here to work. You're here not to collect the owner's grapes. You take what you need. The owner's happy to let you have them, but don't hoard. Don't take more than you can use in a single lifetime. And we also have to remember that who does this world belong to? It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to Hashem. It's He who allows us to have it during our employment. And as long as we work for God, we can use His bounty. When we stop working, chas v'shalom, we lose that reshut, that permission, that license. And that also means that when we do enjoy Hashem's grapes, we have to remember to say thank you, to acknowledge Him. Please, before we take, and thank you afterwards. That's why we say brachas, we say blessings before and after eating. We're asking for permission to partake of Hashem's greatness and His largesse, and we thank Him after it's done. Please God, you should enjoy, each of you, many, many blessings, many, many brachas in your life. Take this opportunity to add another one to them. L'shana tova, matuka tikas, v'tichasem, should be inscribed and sealed for a good and healthy and sweet and productive new coming year. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.